Here we are. We're back again on SNEED-CAST. Alexa is behind the camera taking wonderful notes. We have with us again, second time guest, Jessica Infante of Brewbound is going to be joining us, talk a little bit about the end of the year, what it looks like for craft brewers, as well as what 2025 looks like, and kind of just the overall industry and some interesting notes. We're also going to talk a little bit about the upcoming Brewbound conference. Will be next month. This is actually, it'll be the week that this is dropping. So as you're watching this, Brewbound will be that week with lots of interesting speakers and topics. But other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. I guess, Quentin, if you want to set this there, get things kicked off.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Jessica. So it's funny that we dropped this, or it's funny that we are, here right now. It's because I believe Molson-Coors just dropped their Q3 earnings report. And last we talked was that the craft beer world was failing a bit, or failing is a harsh word. It was on a downturn, but our mass beer sales were still doing strong. The weirdest thing about this one was that I believe they showed that their Q3 earnings were down specifically within North America. And I'm super curious about that because they showed every other continent going up. So is there something to glean from that, or is that a larger trend going on? And I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, of course. So first of all, thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be back with you. Yeah, Molson Coors reported Q3 earnings last week. And what you have to consider when you look at these percentages compared to last year is what was happening last year. And last year was a weird time, particularly for, the major brewers in this country. They were, a few months removed from what we are now calling a black swan event, which was the massive conservative-led consumer boycotts against Bud Light after the brand had partnered with a transgender influencer. A lot of people were very outspoken how they were no longer drinking Bud Light, and that helped boost sales of the Molson Coors portfolio, specifically Coors Light, Miller Lite, and Coors Banquet. So it's hard to cycle against numbers like that because you're always going to look like you're down when you had like a big boost in sales. But the company feels pretty optimistic about this because they are still doing better than they were 2 years ago. So that means that they were able to retain a lot of the gains that they made in the wake of those boycotts. Another thing that Molson Coors is cycling against from last year was they had a pretty lengthy strike at their Fort Worth brewery. So in anticipation for that, they had built up a lot of inventory that was moving through the system. So there's just two like funky things that are making their numbers look a little weird. But yeah, by all accounts, like the Americas segment for Molson Coors looked pretty bad, particularly in the US. There's two things that we look at when we are checking out beer company earnings reports, which is shipments and depletions. And forgive me if I get way too in the weeds, and feel free to stop me. But shipments are the beer that the brewery sends to its wholesalers. Depletions is the beer that moves from the wholesaler to the retailers. Because of the way the 3-tier system works in our country, it's pretty hard for a brewery to know exactly how much beer gets to retail. So, I mean, it's not hard. There's lots of ways to figure it out, but there's not really any one direct shot. So we kind of measure like the beer that breweries push out and then how much of that beer gets removed from distributors to stores and bars and restaurants and all of that. So for Molson Coors, net sales in the Americas for Q3 were down 11%. This was driven by 15.6% decline in financial volumes, which is basically what Molson Coors is calling their shipments, which is the beer they send to wholesalers. Those were steeper in the US. They were down 17.9%, which is a lot. And the thing is that their CEO was pretty optimistic about it. He's like, hey, like we're up against some weird stuff last year. Doesn't seem like they're reading too much into this. One thing that I took away from the call was that they're feeling really optimistic about what's going on with Blue Moon, which is the best-selling craft beer brand in the country. Some people would say it's not craft.
I was going to say craft beer, right?
Yeah, but the large data providers do lump it in with craft, and they've done a lot to bolster that brand lately. They redesigned all the packaging. They recently launched a non-alc version, which Gavin Hattersley, who's the CEO of Molson Coors, said on the call is now the #2 selling craft non-alc, which that's pretty big. That's a super competitive space right now, and I'm sure we'll get into it. And they also reimagined Blue Moon Light Sky, which was their new innovation back in 2020, like a lightened up version of Blue Moon. They are now just calling it Blue Moon Light, which, hey, I think that was smart.
And it's really good too. I've had it a couple times. It's a nice light blue moon.
It's fun. It's crazy because I've always gone to Blue Moon as like my light summer beer. So the fact that they go any lighter is kind of. No, this is all really interesting stuff. Yeah, you kind of touched on some stuff there, like because that's kind of what I've been curious about. At least I'm a little bit of a LinkedIn, nerd or addict or whatever you might want to call it. So, but a lot of what I see on LinkedIn, especially coming from craft brewers in that space, is just that burgeoning NA space. Just non-alcoholic beverages seem to just really be like the hot ticket here coming into the close of 2024. So don't know kind of what data points or what kind of thoughts you have to share around that. What 2025 potentially could hold, projecting to continue to grow, and what that kind of looks like.
Plenty of data points about non-alc. So the thing to remember about non-alc is that it gets a lot of shine. Everybody's really excited about it, but it is still very small compared to the rest of the beer industry. The last check I did last night on Circana is one of the major data providers that we, and they don't just cover beer, they cover like basically anything you'd buy at a grocery store. But their beer reports are really helpful, and their data through October 6th showed that at the combination of multi-outlet grocery stores, mass retailers, club stores, convenience stores, non-alc beer is just about 1% of all beer sales. So teeny, but growing. Dollar sales were up almost 30% compared to the same time last year. So doing well, we're seeing a ton of new entrants, particularly from major craft players. Firestone Walker has launched what they're calling 805, which is a non-alc version of their 805 Blonde Ale. Boulevard's got 3 non-alcs, 2 are IPAs. One, I think, is a lemon-flavored wheat variety, similar to their, super famous, Boulevard wheat. Sierra Nevada is really expanding its NA family. They're doing a nationally available variety pack, which is pretty rare. Not too many non-alc players are offering that.
Yeah, that's
And
a lot of
then
effort that goes into doing a variety pack of NA. So just from a
huge.
statistical standpoint, brewing and everything else, that's a heck of a commitment. That says something about what their belief is, definitely about the
Totally.
segment.
For sure. So those are like the major craft players. Dale's also has, they're calling it designated Dale's, which I thought was cute.
I love a good marketing pun.
Right?
Yes.
We've also got a bunch of dedicated non-alc brewers in the craft space. So everybody knows Athletic, but there's Best Day. And recently, like the one that's gotten the most coverage lately, likely due to its celebrity co-founder, is Biro, which is from Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I know him as Zendaya's boyfriend, but
Totally. That's also, I would not hate being known as that, so hey. So then we've hit mass beer and NA beer. And then last time we talked, we had a whole big discussion on craft breweries. Has there been an update since then? I know you have been to a couple trade shows, so has there been anything that's come out of that, just specifically with craft beer?
I wish I had good news for you. It's a mess, kind of, but the off-premise data for craft, it didn't look too awful. Chain off-premise dollar sales for craft are down 3.6%, which has and could be a lot worse. Craft share of the overall market at off-premise retailers is just under 10%. But, I revisited our conversation too, and something that we talked a lot about was the on-premise, and that's still something that is trying to make a comeback. And we'll see the Beer Institute, which is the trade group that represents all brewers, but mostly the bigger guys. So there's 3 big trade groups in the space. There's the Beer Institute, which is brewers of all sizes, the Brewers Association, which is small independent craft brewers, and then the National Beer Wholesalers Association, which represents all the distributors. So we go to all their trade shows and their conferences. We keep up with them a lot. The Beer Institute, just put out a packaging report, and they hadn't done it in several years. And what I thought was interesting was that, first of all, cans are way back up. I mean, cans and bottles have had like kind of a really interesting kind of tumultuous relationship, but cans have always been the dominant format. But draft beer fell a little bit compared to last year. Draft beer accounted for 8.9% of all of the volume in the country. It was down from 9% last year. But before COVID in 2019, it was 10.4%. So it's still not back up there. It's close, but it's just not quite there. And it's the same things we talked about last time. Draft lines are expensive, difficult to maintain, but I think the on-premise still really, it matters, like that's where drinkers create experiences. That's where you're more likely to create a really like memorable encounter with a brand, much more memorable than you cracking open a 6-pack on your couch.
I agree 100%.
The couch.
Some of the strongest craft brewers here in the Houston area, I mean, I think they're the biggest part of their brand strength comes from building that community around the brewery. And nobody's done it better than Karbach. Obviously, they got bought out, by InBev, probably almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
Pretty close to it. And, they that was built, and they're still big on-premise, music festivals and art things. They got a restaurant there. So, I mean, yeah, that obviously is a formula that works for these, smaller breweries and whatnot.
And I've been listening to your podcast, which is great. I suggest if you're in the beer world, go listen to it. It's great to hear from 3 experts on it and often guests all the time.
Thank you.
And I believe I was listening to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the big thing about on-premise sales is how it can lead to off-premise sales, and that's very much a relationship it's very much there. It does affect each other. So what is the stat on that, and how is that going forward for a craft as far as the on-premise leading towards
Great question.
premise rather?
So I don't know that I could have a stat for you on that. But that's like the general conventional wisdom for always. You launch a beer on draft first. Like the typical kind of timeline would be to launch a new product on draft right around now, like November-ish. Get it in the market, get it on tap, having people try it. Then you would launch it into, stores for about February, right when all those resets start to take place, February and March. And that's kind of the way it's always been done. COVID obviously kind of created a big disruption in that format, but it does still seem to hold quite a bit. So,
hey guys, just taking a quick break to bring you a word from our sponsor, which is ourselves. It is the SNEED Titan T7 handheld printer. It's holiday season, so make sure that you get the best gift you possibly could for your own business. The Titan T7 delivers high-quality half-inch character prints with an impressive 600 dpi resolution. Effortlessly upload and print sequentially from a USB list, and take advantage of variable data barcode printing with embedded timestamps or counters. Plus, its innovative design ensures spill-free ink use no matter the printing angle. Experience the unmatched flexibility and versatility that the Titan T7 brings to your production line. So we're going to get right back to Jessica with the awesome info, and please make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment as well. Thanks, guys.
Regarding on-premise and then just draft sales in general, so a guest we had on a few weeks ago, I think that episode just dropped recently, it was the CRO from Eighth Wonder Brewing and Buffalo Bayou Hemp here in the Houston area. And not sure how much you guys have seen or noticed about them from where you guys sit, but a big part of their strategy and what they're doing is on the NA side, functional beverages, CBD and THC, infused seltzers and beverages. So originally it was 2 separate companies, Buffalo Bayou Hemp and then Eighth Wonder Brewery, and they merged or had an acquisition, whatever it was, about a year and a half ago. And they obviously saw that opportunity. One thing he talked about, Joel, was the golden opportunity for tap handles. And I don't know, I can't remember, maybe that was more specific here in Texas, but that there's a lot of tap handles that are sitting empty around, that he's going into. And again, starting that on-premise, get that tap handle, get those seltzers, those NA seltzers, NA beverages, or even if it's CBD or hemp-infused beverages. So just kind of interesting seeing that example of the merging or bridging of these 2 industries. I mentioned earlier before we started recording, breweries are a big part of our customer base, but also the cannabis, CBD, THC space. So to me, it's really interesting seeing how there's these 2 different spaces are starting to maybe get more, integrated. And don't know if that's something that is across the rest of the country, if that is also starting to percolate, or if it's more, I know it's very big, hemp-infused type products are very big in red states where cannabis hasn't been legalized yet. So there's a lot of different things at play there. But just speaking more to, I guess, on the brewery side of things, opportunities and within that space. I'm kind of doing what you did. I kind of rambled and made my own statement as opposed to asking a question. But we'd just kind of love to hear your perspective on that and kind of what the tea leaves are saying, around the industry.
Well, so THC drinks were a huge topic at the MBWA convention. I think it like late September into October, which was interesting to me because, like for the longest time, it was always like, we don't even talk about cannabis. Let's not think about it. But that's totally not what's happening anymore. And the thinking among wholesalers and the trade group is that who better than us to distribute an intoxicating beverage? Like we know how to do it. We know how to do it responsibly. So the prevailing thought right now is if your state is having conversations about, how to regulate this, making any changes, like make sure you are at that table because there's no one better than you to know how to distribute, sell, and just generally take care of these products in a responsible manner. Now, my coworker Zoe Licata just came back from the Beer Institute's conference last week, and she put together a great story on like everything that brewers need to know to look out for, and how the election is going to, impact things potentially. And something that they discussed was that the 2018 Farm Bill, which is basically what allowed all of these THC beverages to come out, has expired. So a lot of uncertainty there. I chatted with her right before we got on, just to get the updates, and she said they're trying to put together a few like piecemeal extensions, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And experts at the conference that she attended said the most likely outcome here is going to be a short-term extension, but probably, like federal legalization looks really unlikely right now.
Yeah, you got to love all that red tape involved of doing these things. Good stuff. And then we have,
So complicated.
yeah, absolutely. But the point that you made there is very kind of mirrors a little bit of what Joel said, and another individual we had, more specifically from the cannabis space. He was just that they talked like the knowledge and know-how of distribution and having the logistical supply chain in place, especially here in Texas, TABC and everything else, and that's the approach that Eighth Wonder Buffalo Bayou has been going. Is we already have these relationships with specs, we have these relationships with beer distributors. Let's leverage those relationships, take this other product, build the brand up, and then get them in. And so now you're starting to see, at least here in Texas, these hemp infused beverages at common stores like Specs and Buc-ee's, our world famous gas station here in Texas.
I'd love to go to a Buc-ee's.
Yeah, and so there, and I think that's a big part of it too, is just that normalization aspect of people kind of like, wait, I've just always heard, all these different things over my, lifetime about, cannabis and everything else. And so that's a big part of what they're doing. But yeah, that point about like hemp-based distribution and sales structures in red states are a lot more business-oriented, whereas talking to this individual from the cannabis space in blue states, where you do have legalized cannabis, there's a lot of, there's no uniformity. There's so many different angles of it, and a lot of bad players and whatnot trying to take advantage of loose regulations. Where kind of his hypothesis is that eventually you're going to have a bridge where these companies are going to basically kind of start to get into that beer distribution model, or that intoxicated beverage model of distribution, because it seems to be working, and that's how the entire system is set up anyway. So just leverage your way into that. It's going to be interesting to follow for sure, because it's going to continue to grow, and like here in Texas, there's a lot of companies that are, they're seeing that growth opportunity with NA beverages and everything else, that this is another functional way to be able to grow their business. So,
Does Texas
you
have
hit
a
on
law?
it.
I'm sorry.
It's, no, you're
Are you guys just so in Texas? Are these drinks just like taking their directive from the Farm Bill, or do you have like a state level law?
yeah,
It's pretty crazy. I mean, we talked to them about it, and we asked them. It was like, they're a big business, like they're a huge business, and we're like, do you guys feel confident because you're in Texas? And like the politicians here, like the ones within power, have been very vocal about how like they don't like that they found the loophole. And it's like, you guys are investing quite a bit of cash into this. You guys must know something that we don't. But yeah, it's just like, it's kind of the Wild West, which is, I mean, like liquor stores here, you can't buy beer until 10 a.m. here on Sunday. and liquor stores here are closed on Sundays, those drinks are available on Sundays. You can go into a dispensary on a Sunday here, or a dispensary here on a Sunday, and go buy those drinks. So it's a total Wild West. Where here in Texas, there are still dry counties here. There are places where you can't buy beer. So it's the most bizarre thing.
It is a very strange place. Yeah, the Lieutenant Governor of Texas as well as the Attorney General of Texas have both come out and said their top priorities for the 2025 legislative session is banning hemp-derived intoxicants. So yeah, it is really interesting to see how successful they are, because there are some pretty big companies and growing, established, community-respected companies that are in this space. So we're getting a little off topic here because it's not entirely brewery related, but it's very interesting. And we just had, so I'm sure you're familiar with the Michelin, restaurant ratings. They just announced their big Texas one. Interesting, one of the honorable mentions on that list is a barbecue place here locally to us that is a very well-respected barbecue establishment in this community, and they are making THC-infused chocolates and desserts. So you have these establishments. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting see how it all plays out. But that gentleman from Eighth Wonder was very confident in the skill of their lobbyists. Is kind of the impression that I got, is that they're going full steam ahead and they're not slowing down. So
that stresses me out. If it makes you feel any better, I can't buy alcohol on Sundays before 10 either in Massachusetts.
Oh, Massachusetts, we talked about it last time. I'm consistently shocked at how strict the laws are there. Happy hours, all that stuff, and it's so bizarre.
In Pennsylvania, you can't buy beer at gas stations. Yeah. That's weird.
Yeah. That's weird. Yeah.
Here either, but we also can't buy beer at grocery stores.
I'm sure we could talk for hours about that specifically. The only thing that I saw that was interesting was that tariffs were a huge subject, and aluminum tariffs were often the ones that were levied and talked about. Aluminum cans, you said that cans were up huge. Did those tariffs, because I believe last time Trump was in office, he did tariff aluminum and pretty fiercely. How did that affect the can making process last time around? And is that same fear still there, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, so those aluminum tariffs, it's called Section 232, went into effect in 2018, still in place. This is a huge issue for the Beer Institute. So I spent some time on their website, and between 2018 and 2023, brewers and other beverage makers have paid $2.175 billion in aluminum tariffs. But the problem is that the U.S. Treasury has only collected $135 million of that, which is 6%. The thing that happens is that not every country is subject to these tariffs, and aluminum comes from a lot of different places. So we get a lot of aluminum from Canada, which is not subjected to the tariff. But the problem is that aluminum comes in a bunch of different forms. So the raw aluminum is getting tariffed, and then all of that raw aluminum gets combined and put together and eventually turned into can sheet, which gets turned into cans. So everything is being charged at the tariff price, whether it was tariffed or not. So it's been quite a thing. And the BI study that they commissioned in 2018 found that tariffs, if they went in as proposed, which they did, would increase the cost of beer manufacturing by $347 million annually, which is a lot of money. So they would really like to see this overturned. Obviously, the way things are going, I don't think that is going to happen. And they were pushing throughout the entire Biden administration to get this tariff repealed too, and it didn't happen. The other tariffs, really interesting study came out from our friends at Bernstein, a financial services firm. Their analysts, Nadine Sarwat and Trevor Sterling, found that if a 10% tariff on beverage alcohol products was levied, it would require affected breweries to raise their prices 4.5% to offset the impact on cash gross margin, assuming that they have a margin of 55%, which is really high and almost no one does. So 4.5% is a lot. Breweries have been taking price up pretty much every year, but not really any more than 1% to 2%. That's a massive increase. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong here. I just have a feeling that craft breweries typically use cans because bottles are typically way more expensive, right? Or am I just completely out of left field on that?
No, I don't know actually, but consumers just prefer them.
They're easy to carry and all that. Okay, so, but all that to say is that that's a huge sector of how beer is packaged, and that driving up is a nightmare, frankly.
Yeah.
So
Plus, I've seen a lot of
said
chatter online about breweries saying they're trying to get ingredients, like any ingredients that they source from overseas, they're trying to get them in now to beat,
Right.
you know, the
Yeah.
implementation of any
They
tariffs.
get
But
an inventory filled. Yeah.
It's funny what you said about bottles though, because I'm a little bit older than you, Quentin. But like I remember when I first got into craft beer about 15 years ago, it was all bottles, and like Southern Star was one of the first. I think they still claim to be the first craft brewer in Texas to can. That was like their big claim to fame early on, was that they were craft beer in a can, and then all of a sudden like everybody switched to cans over the course of that last decade, which I don't know, just a weird little note because it is. But yeah, everything's cans now, whereas it used to be craft was almost, I feel like, exclusively bottles.
Tangent on this alert. Sorry, Jessica, we just keep going everywhere.
No.
I back before Carbot got bought out by AB InBev, I went on a tour there, and it was a really funny one because they had a whole part where they talked about how their beer would never be in bottles because they believed that the beer bottle led to degradation because it's clear, and if your beer is ever skunked out, it's because it's in a bottle. That was a week before they got bought out. The week after they got that, they were, or not a week, probably like a month after that, they were running ads about their beer being in glass, which I thought was funny. So I guess some people feel very strongly about that. I remember that tour, and they were very harsh. They said you will never see that happen with us. So
I don't know. Did we talk last time about how I used to work at Sam Adams?
Oh, cool.
We might have mentioned it, but yeah, I mean, I would love to hear more about that.
Well, so where I was going to take that was that, I mean, we don't need to talk about my old job, but before my time at Boston Beer, I started in 2010. They had created the Beer Drinkers Bill of Rights. I'm sure it was probably in the 90s or something. And if you read it, it's really funny because they had like one point that was like, never Sam in a can, which like one of the first, like on my very first day in my full-time marketing job, because I was a part-time tour guide and then I moved into the marketing department. And on my first day in 2013 as a full-time marketer, we devised, we like brainstormed how to launch our new cans. So it was like clearly like we changed our mind about that. But the whole list said like never Sam in a can, never a Sam Light, which they made for a long time. It was a great beer. And now they've got another new light beer coming out. I think one of their test markets was Texas recently. That's another thing we should probably talk about is light craft beer, which is doing really well. But yeah, everybody used to, and it is true, like there is some degradation that can happen with bottles. The crown caps, can let a little bit of oxygen in, and that can, lead to, some off flavors being created and makes the beer taste a little bit like wet cardboard. Brown glass is okay, but clear glass and green glass to an extent can let in more light, which creates what people think of as being skunked. Doesn't come from changing temperatures. It comes from ultraviolet lights interacting with hop compounds.
Corona.
Wow, I'm
is-
just nerding out
This is
here.
scientific, and I have a comm degree, so I am not smart that at all. So you mentioned light craft. What's going on there? It seems like it's blowing up.
Yes, it totally is. So I checked out the Circana data, and they break down, top styles among craft beer. Light craft is up 16%. That's massive. Like the only other notable, increase in dollar sales was craft Pilsner, which those are, two sides of the same coin for sure.
Do you think that potentially has anything to do with, I know it's so long now, but is that lingering effects of the Bud Light fallout? Just people making that switch and realizing that no, that might be too.
That's a great question. I don't know. I think that's part of it. Like I think like the cracks in the armor there, I think got people thinking, hey, maybe we can try it. But Boulevard up in Kansas City, Missouri is launching what they're calling Boulevard Light, 89 calories. They're keeping it pretty close to their home market. But I was talking to that leadership team and I asked them that question. I was like, is this Bud Light connected? And they said, no, we just think it's the time. We think it's right. People are looking for lighter flavors, lighter bodied beer, lower calories, lower alcohol. And I think light beer has lost its stigma. It's not really a dirty word among craft drinkers. And, craft drinkers, I put myself in that bucket. We are getting older. We're drinking less.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Like, I look at ABV always when I'm deciding what to order. And it's rare that I drink anything out and about that's stronger than 6%.
It's funny you say that because I used to do that too when I was younger, but with the opposite intent. It was always like, let me get the biggest, most powerful, the heaviest. And now I'm like, I'll just have a Blue Moon. Give me something light. And I got sucked into that whole, give me the hoppiest, bitterest, most back of my throat attack.
Or last time you were on, you were kind of my therapist because I was like, well, I'm drinking light beer now, and I used to go for the porter, and you're like, it's fine, that's what everyone's doing. So it made me feel better. It's such a funny trend that I think if you told someone eight 8 years ago, they would probably just laugh right in your face because it's so opposite of where we were going, and it's very, very fascinating to me.
Yeah, but porters and stouts are for the winter. So I will die on that hill.
Yeah.
Those are winter beers. Good. This has been just a lot of great topics, but I think we could kind of tie it up and talk a little bit about Brewbound Live that you guys have when people are watching this week, but coming up here in a few weeks for us. In Marina del Rey, right, in Florida. Can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, what you're most excited about? Maybe you have some favorite topics or favorite speakers. I know you guys have quite an impressive list of speakers. So.
We do, and thank you for asking. So Brewbound Live is our annual business conference. It's going to be December 11th and 12th in Marina del Rey, California, and we live stream the whole thing for free.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. Yeah. Is that just straight on your website where folks can find it, or is it on YouTube?
On our LinkedIn, on our Facebook. It's something we've always done. It's extremely generous of us, but yeah. So let's see. We've got a lot of great topics. I'm really looking forward to Natalie Chilurzo, who's the co-founder of Russian River Brewing. She's going to be delivering the keynote address. She's going to be talking a little bit about how they were able to turn I don't know how familiar you guys are with Russian River, but their flagship beer, and they're only in a handful of states, but their flagship beer is called Pliny the Elder. You can get it anytime you want if you're in, California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, the Philly area, Maine. That might be it. But every spring now, they release Pliny the Younger, which is like a super rare beer, but they've turned this beer release into like a major event. The county that they're in California, Sonoma County, puts out an economic impact study after every Pliny release, and they generate millions of dollars for the area. So Natalie's going to talk about how they were able to turn a beer release into like a super memorable experience that drinkers come back year after year for. They've got people who have met standing in line to buy the beer and have gotten married and come back with their kids.
Oh,
They've
wow.
got
Cool.
friend
Really
groups
cool.
who live in all different countries that come together every year. So Natalie will talk about that. She's a lovely human being. I am hosting a panel that I'm really excited about. We're talking about marketing with the new Belgium CMO, Rebecca Diagonosionis. She's going to be joined by the VP of Global Marketing for Beatbox, Zach Francis. And also on that panel is my friend Julie Rhodes, who is the owner of Not Your Hobby Marketing Services. And what's really interesting to me about these two brands is that New Belgium has really taken a couple different interesting tacks in terms of marketing. They've really leaned into online life. They do partnerships with gamers and streamers. And, their reasoning there is this is where people are. This is what people are doing with their time. And this is where their eyeballs are. So let's, build relationships in that space. And Beatbox is the hard other direction where they sponsor a ton of music festivals that are super, nothing I personally would ever go to because I am old, but super fun multi-day, electronic music festivals. So Julie is going to break down a lot of the lessons that both of these brands share for smaller producers. I'm pumped about this. It's going to be a great conversation.
And so that'll be on the live stream as well?
The whole conference. Plus, we pre-record video interviews with all of our award winners. So we're in the process of doing that right now. So when the conference, takes a break, goes to lunch, has a coffee break, we have really special exclusive content for the live stream audience at home.
What are some of the awards that y'all do at this conference? Like something like you have like Brewery of the Year, or what are some of the
Exactly. Large brewery of the year, which we try to, our dividing line there is 100,000 barrels in production. So large brewer, craft brewer, Beyond Beer Company of the year. Those are the producer awards. Then we have some different awards that are like person of the year, cause of the year, new product of the year, and then beer champion, which usually goes to somebody who has made like a significant like legislative effort, which I think we gave, you know what? I'm going to walk that back. But I'm sure you guys remember in 2019 when Texas finally approved beer to go. We weren't awarding the beer champion award back then, but if we were, that's exactly who it would have gone to, like the Texas Brewers Guild.
We will retroactively claim that.
Yeah, retroactively for sure. And then we also
Yeah,
named
that's
Rising Stars, which are, you know, breweries that we think are worth watching and are doing well.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like an awesome event, and it's going on this week as you listen to it. So please go in and watch, because I'm sure it's going to be some great information.
Or book a last-minute ticket to Marina Del Rey.
Come on out. Not the worst place to be in December.
Especially December. There's lots of parts of the country that probably are not as pleasant as Marina Del Rey. So that's great. Yeah, this has been a great conversation. I love that we've kind of just been a little bit all over everything. Appreciate you taking more time to come chat with us.
Love chatting with you guys. This was so fun.
We have so many craft brewers. It's definitely my personal favorite of our customer segments. I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but I've just been a craft beer nerd for so long that I just love this industry. And they're some of the neatest, coolest, most creative people, both when it comes to marketing, when it comes to recipes. Just there's so many different parts of this industry that I love. So it's really cool having somebody to talk to that you're just more of a in the industry as opposed to just kind of fanboying on the outside here and drinking beer. So really appreciate that time.
Well, thank you for having me.
And then just for an outro on the podcast, like, subscribe, do all the things that Alexa always reminds me that I forget to tell you, and hit the notification button down below, all those things. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and enjoy the holiday season.